welcome back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. It's been a minute. I actually did a Spaces when new Rutgers president William Tate was hired. Wanted to make that into a pod, and long story short, the way X works with Twitter, it took like 3 days to get my archive, and by the time that happened, I just felt like it was too late to put it out, and I could put out a video anyway, so ended up taking an extended absence. Not a bad thing. I think it's good to step away for a while. It wasn't even intentional. It just kind of happened with life, my career. I do not do this pod for income, revenue. It's not my job. It's a passion, and just life's been busy in a good way. The other side of that is, to be honest with you, I've been uninspired to talk about Rutgers athletics. And obviously we're at a pivotal moment right now. I'll talk about a few things that I'm optimistic about. I'll talk about a few things that I'm concerned about. And I kind of feel like this is the week we're going to hear about the athletic director. So kind of wanted to put something out ahead of time and put some thoughts on Rutgers football, Rutgers basketball. Obviously, Rutgers football recruiting-wise going well once again. June is always the time, that Rutgers football recruiting is making waves, which is a positive. The House, that was approved by the judge, so revenue sharing is moving forward. Although, of course, there's some Title IX lawsuits already in play, or lawsuit. But I think we're at a point in history for Rutgers athletics where it can go a lot of different ways. And as a longtime fan, just Rutgers has been in my life forever. I moved to New Jersey when I was 5 because my father got a job at Rutgers. And also recording this at the end of Father's Day, and Rutgers wouldn't be in my life since I was 5 if it wasn't for him. So there's that. Obviously, I ended up going to school at Rutgers, and it's just been a part of my life. And many of you that listen and watch me over the years, it's the same for you in the sense of Rutgers is such an important thing in your life. And we care about the university, we care about athletics, we care about the community. And there is reason to be optimistic, right? With William Tate, and I said on the Spaces, like it was a very inspiring hire. It was an atypical hire for Rutgers. You're taking someone that has been in a dynamic, successful, national power athletic environment. Someone that has, but I think people also on the negative for academics harped on LSU isn't academically ranked very high, but there's a lot of translatable skills, I think, that Tate will bring to the table. A multi-campus institution. I think the fact that, he obviously has a strong fundraising background. He obviously comes from places where that was already kind of built in. So it's a different ballgame at Rutgers, no doubt. But the way in which he's spoken about the importance of athletics, he just seems like a president that values and understands what it means to be a student athlete, him being a student athlete himself, is track and field. So he brings something to the table that Rutgers hasn't had in a president, possibly ever. I can't go all the way back, but at least in modern history, right? And just going into the Big Ten with Barchi, and then Holloway, who was supportive of athletics, but I don't think he did much to change or better athletics. And that's not even a knock. That's just a reality. And I think that, it wasn't in his wheelhouse, but he was supportive. Barchi, didn't know lacrosse from field hockey. So, and that's not a criticism either. Who would expect someone with his academic background? The guy, did amazing things for Rutgers on the academic side with the medical merger and all that. But here we are. Rutgers has risen in the academic ranks under Holloway, consensus top 40 in many rankings. And now you bring in a president that has the background to hopefully take Rutgers to another level as an institution on the athletic front, and that's getting buy-in from other people. Can William Tate bring in fundraisers that haven't existed before? Can he get the academic side to understand the mission and how athletics being successful benefits academics in the long run? Enrollment, all those things. Money is money. And obviously being in the Big Ten and the research part of that is huge. He has some experience there. I just think that, and I've said this, specific to basketball with the GM search and all that, you need new ideas. You need new blood. You need new ideas, new direction, new leadership. And Rutgers, for so many times over the years, in so many different ways, whether it be the Board of Governors or the administration, the athletic department, coaches, just has not been forward-thinking and proactive, right, in making decisions, in changing the way people think about things. And Rutgers has fallen behind in a lot of ways over the years. And obviously, coming into this year, I mean, let's be honest, if you're not a bit gutted from the last year, and that's part of why this last month, I needed to stay away, because I am hurting. Why sugarcoat it, right? I mean, before football even kicked off, you have the Monterey injury, which was devastating. I think season trajectory changing for the program. And also, of course, you have the Pat Hobbs debacle that just really put a black eye, dark cloud on the entire year, that so many people, including myself, were so excited going into this past year. And it just really, started things off in a really big negative way. And football, listen, they had a good year, right? They had a winning season for the first time in a decade. They went back-to-back bowl games. They lost the gut punch loss in that bowl game. And I think there's certainly positives, and there's no doubt Greg Schiano has elevated the program from when he took over a second time. Give him all the credit. But I think we'd be lying if we didn't feel like that team left a little bit on the table, that we thought it could have been a better year. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't need to relitigate them all now. I've talked about them ad nauseum. But I think with expectations going into that year, with things that could have happened, even despite the fact that they were riddled with injuries, and I think just some decisions and maybe a lack of decisions and underperformances, looking back on it, it's disappointing that team didn't have a better season, especially when you look at this year going into it with the schedule. I mean, that schedule that they had was, I don't know if they're ever going to have as favorable of a schedule in the Big Ten again. So that will always kind of be a what if. It was, again, still a successful season. But I think we'd all be lying if we didn't had hoped that more wouldn't have been accomplished there. And then obviously basketball was, nothing. It was a complete failure, because you had a losing record with two of what will be top 5 draft picks later this month. Maybe top 3 picks. Sounds like Dylan Harper's definitely going number 2 to San Antonio. Ace is anywhere 3 to 5, I think. And, listen, the supporting cast ended up not being good enough. There were obviously injuries, most notably to Dylan Harper. There was certainly some bad luck along the way. I think, as we move on in history here, it'll be looked upon as an utter failure of the administration to not properly support Steve Peichel with NIL in terms of going out and really just getting things done to get a better roster. That being said, I thought it was Steve Peichel's, I don't know if I could say worst, but it was, I did not think he had a very good season as a coach at all. I didn't think he managed the expectations well, the media well, the fans well. I didn't think he managed the team well. I didn't think he had a very good year at all. And I think things certainly could have been better with the roster he had. I think injuries certainly were bad luck. specifically Dylan Harper. But I think in the end, you can't be anything but heartbroken, right? And I will never get over that season. So it's just, one of those things that people don't have to like it, right? I mean, I've been pretty critical. I think and I think it warrants more of a critical eye when it comes to this season and the roster build. And I've said some things that not everybody has liked, but I think that at the end of the day, this program's gone backwards, the last 3 years. And I think NIL has a big part of that. And I think that that's a big part of what, President Tate and whoever the new athletic director comes in and has to change, right? And that's the whole argument with new blood and all that. And I think, listen, you see Shiano changing with Jay Butler with strength and conditioning and, making adjustments, right? And that's a loyalist of his for years and years and years. Has only had him as strength and conditioning coach in his, double-digit years as head coach at Rutgers. And Steve Peichel had an opportunity to do the same, and he hasn't made any changes. So it's fair to be skeptical that this year is going to be any better. I do like the return to identity. I think this team last year did not have an identity, and that was a big part of their struggles. I want Steve Peichel to succeed. I want this program to succeed. But I'd be lying if I wasn't, still a bit traumatized by what happened last year and makes me more skeptical for next year, especially with the roster that was built. There's certainly some upside there. There's some exciting ads, but a lot has to go right. And the margin for error, I think, is pretty slim. So realistically, you hope that they're going to make it back to the NCAA tournament, but on paper, and again, there's a lot of months going on, right? Starting right now, this team is together. But it's obvious that my bigger picture point of this podcast to talk is that Rutgers needs real change at the top to dramatically change the future of Rutgers athletics. And that goes for football, it goes for basketball, it goes for a lot of the Olympic sports. A lot of programs that have been successful 3, 4, 5 years ago are not now. I don't think it's any coincidence that NIL is a huge part of that. And you need leadership to change that mindset, right? And I don't know. I think William Tate is a great choice. I think, it's been out there. Steve Politi's done reporting on the athletic director that it's a non-traditional pick, meaning not from the college ranks. It's more of like a sports executive. Yeah, sure. On paper, that makes sense in the changing dynamic of college athletics right now. But it really comes down to the right people, right? The right people in place, the right fits for right now at Rutgers, and being able to impact change in a positive way. And that's going to be the key to everything, because I'm concerned about where things are headed over the next decade and that where Rutgers potentially could be. 3 years ago, we were super optimistic. There was real reasons for that. And there's no secret that things have stepped back dramatically as a whole. You had rowing, placed in the top 10 nationally and second in the Big Ten. You had Chloe Tenberg just missed defending her national title in the pole vault, finished in second. But, that's not going to move the needle in terms of perception, in terms of revenue, in terms of the athletic department being in the top half of the Big Ten. And, there was something said, I forget, I had it in my head last week, but there was someone from Louisville, a media member that, he's always kind of tweaked Rutgers, but he made a joke about Rutgers football, about scheduling and, about, I think it was something in regards to the SEC, that the Big Ten and SEC wanted to schedule each other, and that, Rutgers' phone was going to ring off the hook. Right. And it's this cloud of perception that even when Rutgers football the last 2 years has turned it around, it's still, there's certain people that are going to look at Rutgers and poke fun and make jokes. And, the basketball team took a lot of knocks this year, and, things aren't going to change just over one season. There needs to be institutional change for real change to occur and for reputation and perception to change nationally. And can Rutgers become a top half Big Ten athletic department? Academically, I think they're right there. But athletically, can they be in that top half? And is that too much to ask? Because we know right now they're nowhere close from an NIL perspective in the top half. And is that correlation, like for like? No, not necessarily. But you've seen this offseason, and you saw the Indiana football, for example, right? To hire Kirk Cignetti, and there were some of the top spenders in the country last year in NIL. I think it's been reported over $10 million for that team, and hey, they made the college playoffs, so it worked, right? Rutgers, is that ever going to happen, in terms of getting that type of support? Even if you have the right fits here, probably not. But you still need the right fit, the right people making decisions and hiring the right people to get the most out of whatever resources are available here. And I think there's a little bit of that too. I don't think that's been happening. So there's a long road to go. And, it's never just a straight line. But we started to see progression, and then things really bottomed out. And, it was all a precursor of when Pat Hobbs scandal started, and then everything else followed. And this last year was really, really frustrating. And, there's a new future now with William Tate as president, and they're going to hire a new AD. And again, it's going to be a new wave idea. I think, it sounds like from Politi that they have plans to, hire a strong number two to basically run the athletic department, and that AD is essentially going to be the face and the brand, and to be able to improve the brand that is Rutgers Athletics with fundraising dollars and NIL and support. And, people always talk about corporate support and Wall Street, and I've never bought into that. I don't think Wall Street, Rutgers location has anything to do with that. You had the Cavender twins on the first day of NIL 3-4 years ago on a billboard in Times Square, right? And they were from Fresno State, and then they went to Miami. But marketing is marketing, brand building is brand building. And in this day and age, the digital age, online age, it doesn't matter where you are. And listen, JP Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley, you think that they need to invest in Rutgers athletes for, sponsorship to promote their brand? It's kind of ridiculous. So you need people to come in and bring in new ideas, new blood, new money. I think the Board of Governors has done a great job adding William Tate, Amy Towers. It's out of the box thinking, and that's what Rutgers needs. And now this AD hire needs to be in synergy with the president, right, and the Board of Governors, and there needs to be real cohesion, unity. I've talked about this in the past, alignment from the top down. Can Rutgers have that finally? I thought they had it for a little while. Turns out they didn't, and it all fell apart. So I think, with football, there's certainly, I think they're not far away from being a top half Big Ten program. They're far away from being a top third program, I think. I don't know if that will ever happen, but they're certainly in the mix to get in that top half. And I think, as encouraging as the recruiting, right now they're ranked 10th in the composite in 24/7 Sports. They have 4 4-stars, a bunch of 3-stars. But if you look at the player grade, right, individual player grade, I've talked about this a lot in the past. There's about 25 schools behind Rutgers right now in the overall rankings that have a higher individual player grade average. So once they start adding more recruits at that grade or higher, they're going to pass Rutgers. So this class still is going to be, they have 22 commits already. They're going to be a top 30, top 35 class. Nothing wrong with that. Major progress since before Shiano was here. Not unhappy with it at all. Not trying to be a party pooper. I'm just saying, I just laugh every year now in June when you get these articles and tweets and Rutgers is in the top 10 and both. It's the trajectory for Rutgers recruiting took a step up, but it hasn't changed in the last 2 years. It's the same, and that's okay. And I think Shiano has explored and made a priority the portal. He's gotten financial support to go out and get impact players from the portal, and we'll see. It seems like you got a lot of good players that can make an impact this offseason. Now it's going to come down to, can they actually do that? I think he has a real plan. I think he has real organizational structure. He obviously has resources. He has a huge staff, but more power to him. He certainly understands, and I think understood early on what it was going to take. And you're seeing the results of that. Now, it hasn't resulted in landmark breakthroughs, right? He's not getting 5-star after 5-star, but he's got a very respectable recruiting. He's recruiting at a very respectable level right now. I am going to have David Anderson on this week. We're going to go through the class a little bit, go through specifics. But listen, football is in a good place. It's not in a great place, and it needs help. And I think to avoid plateauing, you need new blood in there in terms of an AD with leadership that can actually work with Schiano. Schiano essentially did this all on his own. Can he have an advocate with the AD? Can he have an advocate with the president? Can there be even more traction made now that we have experienced a little bit of success? Can this team this year not take a step back, at least finish 6-6? It's certainly possible, but it's going to be a harder road. So there's a lot of questions there. Basketball, Steve Peichel, certainly under the gun. That buyout is still pretty big, dollars-wise, years-wise. So I don't buy into the fact that, he's on the hot seat per se where he would lose his job at the end of the year. And I think part of my concern with the AD hire is this is not an easy situation for an AD to come into, right? You have a football coach that's entrenched in their position and had essentially control of the program with the prior AD, right? So that could end up being a good dynamic depending on who the fit is, but it's not an easy dynamic to come into when a lot of ADs like to make their own hires at football and basketball. Now, if this is a non-traditional hire, it could be non-traditional priorities, and maybe that ego in terms of wanting to make that hire is less important. Maybe it's having a professional sports executive per se, if it's that type, come in to work with Schiano, could be a great thing and something that he will welcome with open arms. So there's that dynamic. Then you have basketball. You have a coach that's had 3 underperforming seasons in a row, that has a huge buyout and a ton of years left. Not a great situation for an AD to come into. If you want to make a change after next year, you have to get that buyout paid off. 20+ million. Not to mention you're way behind on NIL as a basketball program. So those two things right there, that makes it a challenging job. Not to mention Rutgers not known for NIL or fundraising traditionally. Some resources facilities need to be addressed. Rutgers is not an easy job as an AD. And again, maybe going into that professional sports executive role, if that is what it sounds like they're doing, maybe there's a different perspective there and a different take and a different view on what Rutgers can be. And that's what they need. That's what they need. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that I've been concerned. I am concerned. I'm hopeful after William Tate was hired as president. I think he really has the right mindset for a modern president that Rutgers athletics needs right now. So I'm super encouraged by that. And obviously him being involved in that hire for the new AD is super encouraging as well. But we'll see. And we've been here before where we had hope and hope went out the window. And here we are today after this past year that really just, took a lot of the wind out of my sails and probably a lot of other fans. I've heard from a lot of other fans. And you just hope that we're seeing the steps laid for a foundation that can really change things over this next decade. Because for Rutgers to survive, and, it's not even just about staying in the Big Ten. It's wanting to be formidable in the Big Ten. As an athletic department, as a university, as a name that, 10 years from now, people will say, well, Rutgers, yeah, of course they're top half of the Big Ten athletic department. What are you talking about? Because today, even when some of their teams are successful, Rutgers can still be the butt of jokes. And does that really matter? It does matter. It does matter because recruits hear that stuff, other fan bases hear that stuff, and it just perpetuates itself as reality. And that needs to change. And we need real leadership at the top to do that. So, bravo to the Board of Governors for getting William Tate in as president. I'm very hopeful for his tenure, not just athletics, but overall, understanding a large, dynamic, multifaceted, complicated university. Obviously, he's not a Northeast guy, but he's from Chicago, so I'm sure he knows how to, politically battle. And I'm really hopeful there. At the same time, with everything that's happened over many, many years, but also specifically this past year and going into this year and even, football on the way up, but having the kind of schedule they're going to have, having so many newcomers, it's just all the things that Rutgers needs to happen in this coming year. Football, basketball, wrestling had a very good regular season, didn't have had its worst nationals in a long time. Baseball, just 500, not terrible, but hasn't taken that step. Men's lacrosse has taken a step back. Men's soccer took a step back. A lot of things have taken step backs. And nothing really stood out about this past athletic year. And a lot has to go right next year for key teams. So, again, I'm hopeful, but concerned. And that's where I've been the last month, and it hasn't changed. And there's been plenty more to talk about soon enough. I'm not just going to put out a pod to put out a pod. Like I said, I've been busy and just kind of thinking about things. And I finally felt I was at a place where I could put some things out and maybe, maybe people could relate to what I'm saying. Maybe people think I'm bonkers, but I just wanted to, get back in the saddle and say my 2 cents about where things are. And, it's taken a very long time. And I was critical of the president's search taking as long as it did. Granted, it ended up in a great way, I think. And if they had to wait till the school year was over to hire Tate, then that's justified. But at the same time, here we are. It's almost July 4th. They don't have an AD. If they hire an AD this week, great. They're still behind. If you waited even longer than you should have to get the right people, well, then the right people hopefully will make that wait worth it. But if you don't hire the right people and you're this far behind going into a transformational year in college athletics, it's going to make things even more difficult to overcome. So let's see who this AD hire is. I really hope it comes this week. And excited for the William Tate era at Rutgers as a whole, but what it means to athletics specifically. But it's a pivotal year ahead. And for Rutgers fans, it's fair to be kind of down in the dumps about what just happened. And I'll, listen, it's still bothering me. I mean, I'm not going to get over it. I don't know. Please don't send me messages. You need to get a life and all this stuff. I'm very happy in life. I'm talking about as a Rutgers fan and a Rutgers fan that does this podcast. There's a lot of things that are unsettling and disappointing and concerning and have taken the fun out of doing this. So thank you for listening and watching once again. I appreciate it, and hope everyone is having a good start to the summer. And I'll be back soon enough. I'll have David Anderson on later this week to talk football recruiting. I'll do some basketball stuff soon enough as well. And as always, thanks again. Talk to you soon.